guys, here we go. The Build Show Live. We got a really fun episode for you today, guys. We're talking pretty much any wood that would get used for construction, except for framing lumber. Exterior woods, interior woods, cladding, decking, all kinds of stuff. We got a good show. Y'all ready? Let's get going. All right, guys, Robbie Davis, the owner of Delta Millworks, and I have a really fun show. And as you can see, this is not your normal studio setup, Robbie. We are at your mill shop where his guys are actually custom milling all kinds of stuff in the background. This is gonna be fun, Robbie. You ready?
Thanks, Matt. Great to have y'all here. Welcome to Delta Millworks. Y'all are welcome here anytime. But yeah, let's talk some wood. We have a lot to cover today.
And you know, the background, Robbie, I just gotta mention, we've got pecan live edge slabs here. We've got giant Doug fir slabs over here. We've got an order of cabiny decking. There's all kinds of stuff stacked up around here. This is gonna be a lot of fun. But guys, before we get into the specifics, today we're gonna be talking about all kinds of different options, all kinds of science behind it, how you're gonna install it, what are the best practices. Before we get into that, let's actually cut to a tour that Robbie gave me yesterday so we can kind of show you where we are, what they do, and what we're getting into. So first off, let's cut to the video of the tour of Delta Millworks. Robbie, it is hard not to have a big smile when you walk through that door right there. This shop is absolutely gorgeous. I've been a lifetime woodworker in my garage, but this is a whole nother level. I mean, the wood, the machinery, the smells, the look at this building. What's the background of Delta Millworks?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, it's a one-of-a-kind place. My father started the company 36 years ago this year, in 1985. He started in restoration millwork and reclaimed wood. He was really one of the first guys in Texas to start the reclaimed wood trend. Primarily longleaf southern pine, which is now extinct, basically, but it was one of the key species in really building America.
Yeah.
So he started working with demolition contractors, extracting these old timbers from these primarily commercial buildings, sometimes homes as well. But he was doing restoration millwork. Historic homes, courthouses. We worked on the Texas State Capitol for several years in the early 90s. That was a big project for him back then.
Yeah, it was not like you could go to the lumberyard and get new longleaf pine flooring to match some old stuff, right? So that's how your dad got started, huh?
It wasn't around. He couldn't find the wood, and he couldn't match the profiles either. So that's really how Delta began. He was remodeling a house that we grew up in. It was a 1910 built house. In the late 70s, around 1980, he went into a few-year remodel of it. He wanted to maintain a historic certification through the state of Texas, but he couldn't find a wood operation to produce those old profiles and supply the longleaf. So that's really what got him into Delta.
That's really cool. And today, you're shipping stuff all over the nation, and you're in all kinds of different woods, right?
Absolutely. We've definitely evolved over the years. My dad was doing architectural millwork. We're still doing a version of that, but primarily focused on exterior siding, interior flooring, interior walls and ceiling, paneling, exterior decking, fencing, high-grade woods, high-performing finishes, custom colors with the finishes, and very sustainable products as well to boot.
You said a lot, man. Let's show these guys what that looks like. So I'm assuming you get raw wood in, and then you've got finished job packs that are headed out. Where's that process start?
Let's go take a look.
Robbie, this is a lot of Akoya. Is this all rough sawn I'm seeing here?
This is rough sawn Akoya. Akoya is really our most popular product these days, Matt. Gold standard for exterior wood. It's gonna last 50 or 60 years. This product's made in Holland. It's an acetylized wood, so it's a modified wood. The wood species is actually a radiata pine that's plantation grown in New Zealand and other parts of the world. But yeah, this is a rough material. We're working with 4/4, 5/4, 6/4, and 8/4 thicknesses. And yeah, this is how it looks before it hits our machines.
Now I'm seeing some other stuff over here too, Robbie, in your yard. That looks like reclaimed of some sort.
We still work a lot with reclaimed mat. As you know, our company was founded on reclaimed wood. So we're really trying to build out our reclaimed wood program these days as well. Old barn wood, corral fences from Montana and the Rocky Mountains, and some other sources as well. Reclaimed oak, chestnut, barnwood. So we still work with the old material as well as the new these days.
Love it. So this is where it comes in. It's mainly in a raw or a rough state. And then I'm assuming this is headed out, right?
This is a finished pallet. This is how we build them. We custom crate them per order. They're well protected. They're going all over the country, so they need to be protected. I believe this order is going up to Boston. And yeah, this is a finished product. Let's go take a look at how we get here.
That looks like what we just saw outside, maybe some 5 or 6/4 rough sawn Akoya. Is that what we're milling here?
1x6, so that's a full 4/4 by 6 Akoya rough sawn. We're feeding that into a 6-headed molder here.
So that raw wood actually comes in one machine to this profile.
Yeah, it's ready for the molder, pass through. Like I mentioned, it's a 6-headed molder, so we're hitting every edge and face of the board. We're hitting the bottom side. You can see we're running some relief grooves here. This really stabilizes the wood. Also offers some ventilation, especially when you're not installing in a rain screen. You actually get a little ventilation because of that. But more so, it's just kind of standard practice for exterior woods. It helps keep the wood flat.
And what's going on with this, Robbie? I'm noticing like a little triangle inside that groove of that tongue and groove board. What is that?
So this is our standard exterior tongue and groove profile. This is a crusher bead, which you don't see very often, but we do it on all of our exterior woods. If and when the wood wants to swell, it'll crush that bead rather than buckle the wood.
So it gives you a little bit of forgiveness, basically.
Yeah. I'm sure you've seen siding that is swelled, wasn't acclimated, wasn't installed properly, and it'll buckle.
Yep.
That's because the wood has nowhere to go except pull the nail up at the seam.
Gotcha. And so you probably didn't have to do that on Akoya, because this is so stable, but on other woods it would be really important to have that, would be my guess, right?
It's just a best practice measure. We do it on our tongue and groove, our shiplap, and it does allow any expansion if that's going to happen. With the koya, that's not really the case ever.
The crusher bead, I've never heard of that
Crusher
before.
bead.
All right, what's the next step, Robbie?
We're going to go to the brush machine and see how we texture this material.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, we have a 1965 vertical resaw right here. My dad, one of the first machines.
Look at that thing.
One of the first machines my dad got when he got into the longleaf pine business.
Look at that blade, Robbie.
To saw up big timbers. I mean, you can cut a 16 by 16 inch square timber through there. We put 40-foot long timbers through this thing before.
That's wild. And then this machine right across, which looks like it's out of some futuristic movie. What is this one doing?
So this is a brush machine.
Okay.
We do nylon and wire brushing. It adds texture. It adds shape to the surface of the wood. It also preps the wood for staining, which is very important. If you notice the molder, you'll see it has a mill glaze on it. It's from the straight knife. You never want to finish wood if it's not properly sanded or prepped.
And you can kind of see that in the back of this right here, right? That mill glaze?
Yep. This is the back side. You can see the relief grooves.
Yeah, and you're just bundling this up, but on the front side of this, that's been wire brushed, which is now ready for a stain. Is that right?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So it does add texture, and most importantly, even more importantly, it preps the wood so the stain can properly adhere to it.
And so wire brush or sanding might be an option for a finish. What other options are there, Robbie?
Nylon brush. We also do some sandblasting. Be happy to show you some sandblasted material
now, you don't think
as
of that
well.
very often. What is this?
So this is the koya again. We do a lot of Akoya for exterior siding. It's really our go-to for exterior siding. This is sandblasted, as we mentioned. I think this is going to be wire brushed after the sandblasting process. So it's just a really unique finish.
That's cool.
You've seen some sandblasted siding over the years here and there, but not prevalent, not a process that's done every day. But we're doing it more and more, and it's just a very unique finish. When it's finished, it almost looks like a concrete texture.
I was just going to say that.
To it.
Yeah, it almost feels like a board form concrete kind of finish on here. That's wild.
This is a 4-head, I think 40-inch.
Look how big that thing is.
Planer sander. So it has a cutter head, planer head as the first head, and then 4 sanding belt.
And are these going in, or have these already come out?
This is actually a nylon brush. So what we were looking at, you can get a close up.
Wood.
Yep.
Gotcha.
What we were just looking at. So that was nylon brush. It's very subtle.
Yeah, you can see it in the light though. It definitely has a brushed finish.
You can feel it. You can definitely see it in the finished product. And as I mentioned, prepping the surface is key to
That's cool.
proper stain adherence.
What is this chocolatey wood we're looking at?
So this is cabiny.
Okay.
Cabiny is another modified wood, like Akoya. This is made in Norway. It's the same species. It's plantation grown radiata pine. They use a slightly different chemical modification process. So you do get the chocolate brown. It is a little denser than Akoya. So we really like cabiny, especially for decking.
Gotcha.
We call it a direct replacement for epay. It is dense, it's stable, has a 30-year structural warranty, and you do get that rich chocolate brown color that a lot of people are going after.
Too, man. What is this board width there?
This is an 8-inch, so this is a 1x8 tongue and groove, and this will be siding.
I wish you could feel it. It's like really, you just want to touch these boards. They feel great. That's really cool. All right, Robbie, the finishing room. This is that final step before you box it up and send it out, right?
Yes, sir. This is the last step of the process. This is where we apply our colors and ultimately the protection that's going to go on these siding products.
Man, you got a bunch of racks. So basically, these really exciting machines over here are putting the finish on.
We got a few secrets around here, Matt, that we can't fully divulge. We don't want the big boys coming after us, but I will show you what we can here.
I get that, man. I'm a small business as well, and I want to make sure a few of my secrets are held for the in-house. Talk me through the process and what you can show us.
We got some material here on the racks. This is part of our Old Souls collection. This is reclaimed corral board. This comes from old cattle fences out of Montana.
Oh, wow. So like snow fence and that sort of thing too?
Similar to snow fence, but these are coming from cattle fences.
Neat. Beautiful old boards. And some kind of copper looking finish on there, or paint finish?
Yeah, so this is a 2-coat finish. This is gonna be a high performing finish. A unique color, as you can see, but we're all about color, and we can do anything under the sun in terms of color options.
I know that's one thing that's unique about you guys. And this looks nice and inky black. I could see several architects I work with liking this.
This is wire brushed Akoya, one of our very most popular products, with a black stain on it. We do a lot of blacks in this wire brush Sequoia option, but once again, in any color options you want.
So this is pretty much what y'all did for me for my porch ceiling at my house. I did that wire brush with a slightly wider plank and more of a whitish stain, but that's really cool. So that deeper groove is from an actual metal wire rather than the nylon that we saw earlier.
That's a coarse wound wire brush.
Very cool.
To produce that.
And then it looks like you've got maybe some stair parts here as well for somebody?
Yeah, so we're doing more and more stair components, treads, risers, base molds. That's a landing pad right there. But this is going along with a wide plank flooring package of ours.
Very cool. Now, all this wood that we're seeing in here that's been finished already, how long does it need to stay in the kind of drying rack area before you can start palletizing this?
Usually 8 hours minimum, if not overnight.
Okay.
The very last step, we're taking the racks down here and we're down stacking them. As we saw outside, we build custom pallets per order because every quantity, every length is different really. So we don't have standard sizes necessarily.
Oh, that's really pretty. What is that, Robbie?
That's a vertical grain Douglas fir with a kind of gray-blue stain on it. That'll probably be an interior product.
And what'd you do to get that harder grain? It looks like the softer grains kind of been removed. Is that a wire brush or is that?
It's part of the burn and brush technique we do.
Okay. How do you decide when you're going to use a release paper in between there?
We basically use it between the faces of all of our products. We don't put any foam between the back sides, but we do between the face. These pallets are going out of state, sometimes all over the country. We don't want anything being damaged. We don't want the faces
sanding each other,
agitated in transport and damaging anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. Robbie, beautiful tour, man. Almost 4 decades in business. That is pretty fun. How about we finish up this video at your samples room and show these guys what that looks like?
Yeah, let's go take a look.
All right, let's do it. Robbie, look at all these options.
Yes, this is our sample room, Matt. We send out a lot of samples. This is a single sample order going out. We ship stuff all over the country. Samples, as you know, are a crucial part of the design process. Architects put a lot of stock in the sample, the finish. If it's a standard sample of ours, we prefer the standard finishes, of course, but we're also very custom. Architects, high-end builders, they're all about standing out, being unique, being quality. So very often we'll take a standard finish. This is one of our Akoya finishes, and they'll want more texture or a lighter gray, darker gray, whatever. Architects want to stand out.
And so all these are kind of your standard samples, so to speak, but then they could say, I want the same version, but can you make it 20% gray or whatever,
Exactly.
Right? Or 20% lighter.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
We'll get an image sometimes that an architect will send. They find a wood siding image online. They'll say they want this. Sometimes they'll give us a Pantone number to play off of. So we can really dial in colors. We're custom mixing all of our finishes in-house.
Now, I've gotten a sample box from you in the mail before, and I'm assuming that's what this is, right? These are boxes headed out to people?
These are finished boxes heading out. This is what you would expect with the standard box, but these are going all over the country. We have California, Utah, Brooklyn, New York, Salt Lake City. So we're shipping, I don't know, 24 boxes out a day.
That's amazing. And then once you send those, how do you know what you've sent to be able to rack to, I want 20% gray or whatever the issue is?
With custom finishes, we do a few measures. We photograph them first and foremost. We also keep a hard sample.
Okay.
Because we could send a custom sample out, and it could be 3 months, it could be a year from then, from that turning into an order. So we want to make sure we're matching and replicating what we sampled from day one.
Man, that's crazy. This room is really cool to see, Robbie, with all these samples. And getting that box in the mail, I gotta say, it's like a little like Christmas-like.
It is.
Seeing that Delta Millworks box, and I remember opening mine with some of the different samples that I'd ordered up for my soffit and for my interior ceilings. Cool stuff, man. What a tour. Absolutely. Let's head back to the studio and we'll finish up the presentation. All right, y'all, wasn't that cool? Robbie, I had a lot of fun, and I gotta say, the crew that assembled that, mainly Joey, amazing job, really fun video. Guys, the next portion of this Build Show Live, and by the way, there are some of you that are live right now, but a lot of you are watching this in a pre-recorded fashion. If you're watching this live, I've got a Q&A tab on here. I've already gotten, I'm seeing 7 or 8 questions. So do me a favor, if you've got questions as Robbie and I are talking, we're gonna leave at least 10 or maybe more minutes at the end of this time. We're gonna actually answer those questions. We have a couple of Robbie's folks behind the scenes answering questions too. So please, if something comes up, we're not gonna be monitoring the chat, we're gonna be looking at the Q&A. So drop that on the Q&A tab. And also, after Robbie and I kind of spend 15 or 20 minutes kind of giving you all the 411 on these woods, how to use them, what you need to expect, we've got another really fun about 5-minute video that Robbie and I made yesterday where Robbie's gonna show you a couple of his secrets for making this shishugibon or charred wood. That's a really fun video that's only gonna take a few minutes towards the end, so stick around with that. So Robbie, let me turn it over to you, brother. Where do you wanna start? You wanna start outside or inside the house?
Let's start outside, and I'd love to give a general overview of the wood industry and some of the technologies we're looking at today. It's a great time to be in the industry. It's a great time to utilize wood in your design or construction project. Over the last 20 years especially, technology has really improved tremendously with the performance of the wood, how it's produced, and also how it's grown, which links in with the sustainability of it. As you know, I mean, wood was used extensively 100 years ago, longer. We went through a phase of synthetic products, composites, PVC, aluminum, other materials that ultimately performed better than wood at the time because we cut down a lot of the old growth woods in America.
Yeah.
But like I said, over the last 20 years, we've really seen some improvements with wood modification, products like Akoya, cabiny, thermal modification.
Yeah, we're going to get into all those today too, right?
Absolutely. The finishes have improved, so there's been a lot of advancements. So it's a good time to utilize wood for sure.
And that hunk of massive wood right there, that's what we're talking about when you talk about 100-year-old trees, right? Those tiny growth rings. Is that longleaf pine?
This is longleaf pine. As you saw in the video, this is what Delta was founded on. This is an end cutoff of a 41-foot timber. This is a 10-inch by 10-inch. So this is what we started with. My dad would bring these out of old commercial buildings. They have nails, bolt holes, there's paint on them, all sorts of hardware that you have to remove, ultimately to then cut up, plank it out into flooring, moldings, etc.
So this is longleaf that was from a beam like that, is that right? Holy cow, man, that's beautiful. Look at the tight graining on there. And that is a dense piece of wood. I bet that thing weighs a few pounds too, doesn't it?
It does. This chunk probably weighs about 40 pounds, and that's a good shot of the growth rings. Old growth versus new growth wood. You've talked about that before, Matt.
Yep, for sure. Now, if we don't have access to the old growth wood anymore, and I would say, Robbie, this is a good point for me to say, look, I've been building 25 years, and when I started my building career in the 90s, I'm a little ashamed to say I did a lot of vinyl siding,
sure,
and plastic exteriors, even on $2 million houses I was building back in the 90s.
Yeah.
With East Coast production builders. And it troubled me, even though I didn't quite know what it was, to put these stamped wood grain vinyl siding products on houses. And you're right, we probably have a whole generation of builders that have not really used wood siding or wood exteriors or frankly even a lot of wood interiors anymore.
Right. Yeah, as I mentioned, technologies have changed a lot. Back when you started off, there probably weren't a lot of good wood options out there. And even today, people are hesitant to use wood. I mean, we talk to builders all the time. They say they haven't used wood in 10 or 20 years because they had a failure or some sort of issue. But now we have woods that come with structural warranties. They're tested, they're tried and true, they have technology behind them. Some of these wood products are lasting 40, 50, 60 years in something like Akoya or some of these other modified woods.
So we talked about this in the video that we just played a minute ago. You guys are getting this rough sawn Akoya in this looks like a 5/4 chunk right there.
Yep.
You're putting it into that 6-sided molding machine, and you're coming out with Akoya that looks like this that we saw. Now, what is this Akoya wood? I'd not heard of that name 5 years ago, let's say.
Akoya is a brand name. It's not a wood species.
Okay.
The wood species is actually radiata pine for our koya and also our cabiny.
Okay, so this is actually a pine material, radiata pine. And what's special about radiata pine?
As is, not a lot. You see radiata pine at the home stores. It's a cheap wood overall. It's used all over the world. But this material, it's actually plantation grown in New Zealand, Chile, Spain, other parts of the world.
Okay.
So this radiata pine, it's good for the modification process. In 28 years, these trees are ready for harvest. So they grow extremely quick.
Dang, less than 30-year cycle of planting to harvest.
Exactly.
Which means that these growth rings are a little wider. So then how is this pine becoming a stabilized wood that we can use on the outside and is going to last for that long a time?
It's a pressure treated process. So we're all familiar with the treated pines of 10, 20 years ago, which were ultimately pumped full of chemicals and not clean products whatsoever.
Yep.
These are technically chemically modified woods.
Okay.
The koya and the cabiny. are technically chemically modified, but it's a clean modification process. On a molecular level, the Akoya is almost a pickled wood. It's close to vinegar.
Huh.
Totally non-toxic, food grade, safe for plants, animals, humans.
Wow.
No toxicity to these products whatsoever.
And so that process is stabilizing both movement of the wood, meaning it's not going to swell and shrink and change on us. It's also stabilizing it in terms of fungus or wood destroying insects, that sort of thing as well?
Yeah, so basically these processes solidify and change the molecular
composition
of the wood. The free hydroxyls in Akoya or in any wood are what expand, contract, and ultimately rot. It's the organic element of wood.
Got it.
And these processes basically eliminate that.
Very cool.
A product like Akoya has a 2% expansion and contraction rate built into its warranties. Softwoods and lower grade siding, I mean, it can move 5 to 10% at times if there's an influx in moisture or temperature.
Huge change.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, since I saw massive pallets of this outside, you guys are selling a lot of this.
We sell a lot of it. It's kind of our go-to for siding.
Okay.
Also a great decking product, great fencing product. Akoya has a 50-year structural warranty, 50. 25-year ground contact or freshwater contact warranty.
Dang.
In Holland, they use Akoya for canal liners, so it's fully submerged for decades on end.
Holy cow, that's amazing. And this is actually a sample that's real similar that I just put up on my porch under construction. This is that brush that we saw yesterday, right? This is a nylon brush kind of finish.
Yeah.
And then you guys, as we saw in the video yesterday, are doing pre-finishing on basically all these products. Let's transition a little bit. Well, we'll come back to the other ones besides Akoya, but talk to me a little bit about the finishes, what to expect on maintenance. What do these do to the product? All those kinds of things, Robbie.
Yeah, so we do everything in-house, start to finish. We're taking rough material, we're profiling, we're texturing, and then we're staining and coloring. We do the shishugibon process as well on a portion of our products. But yeah, so we're producing a pre-finished product. Once it goes out the door, it's ready for installation. We do custom colors, custom textures. As you can see on our website, we have a lot of options, but we're also doing a lot of custom finishes as well. Architects like to stand out. In terms of the finishes we use, we do high-performing finishes. We really want to focus on high-performing woods, but also the finish is just as important. You really need both. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
You can put Akoya up and leave it unfinished. It's going to naturally age. Any wood would naturally age, but a lot of woods need coatings, and we do want to protect the woods, even the modified woods like Akoya and cabiny, and we offer a ton of different options in terms of pre-finishing.
Now this is an Akoya that looks to me like you have, you're calling it Dry Creek as your finish.
Yep.
But I'm guessing that's actually pretty darn close actually to an aged Akoya had you not finished it, right?
Yeah, so gray tones are pretty popular right now. They're very popular. If you look at our product lineup, you'll see a ton of gray options. Another one that you were just holding up.
Yep.
So that weathered look is popular. And a good thing about a gray stain is that it ages better than something that's a stark black or a dark brown.
Right.
Because once these do start to transition, you'll see a more graceful transition to a natural gray from the original stain gray.
In fact, I would say if you did something like this on your house and it got sun and weather, you might go from the stain color to a natural aging, and you might not need to do any refinishing.
Yeah.
Just leave it as is.
Yeah.
It's pre-weathered almost.
Yeah, a lot of our clients are doing that. We call that a sacrificial stain, meaning that the stain wears off and then you let it naturally age from there.
All right, so besides Akoya, we've spent a few minutes on the Akoya. What are some of these other ones? Are these modified woods as well?
Yeah, so cabiny's a nice product we offer. It's a chocolate brown. It's a modified wood, just like Akoya. It's made in Norway. Similar process overall. Chemical modification changes the wood at a cellular level. Chocolate brown, this is actually denser than Akoya, so we like this for decking especially.
Okay, for a horizontal surface.
Yeah, anytime someone wants, say, epay, we point them to cabiny. It's a direct replacement for epay and some other tropical hardwoods, absolutely.
It looks a lot like epay. Now, that's a great question that I bet we're gonna get in the Q&A. Let's preempt that a little bit.
Sure.
I don't see any epay on the table. You guys aren't selling it, right? Talk to me about epay and what people should know or could know about it. And we're not bashing the epay people necessarily, but you know, let's educate folks a little bit on that.
Epay is a decent wood for decking and siding. It's extremely dense, so it makes it hard to work with. Also, there's a sustainability factor. A lot of it does come from the Amazon, the Brazilian rainforest. And as I mentioned earlier, Delta is all about sustainability and performance. People think epay is the best decking option out there. It's a very good decking option, but there's better products on the market these days that come with warranties. Epay doesn't have a warranty. I've seen 10 or 20-year-old decks that have serious issues with them.
And my concern on that would be, you know, are we replanting epay forests? My understanding it takes a long time for those forests to grow. So I think it's questionable whether we're going to have epay around when my kids get into the building business in 15, 20 years.
Yeah, wood is arguably one of the cleanest, most sustainable building products on the market. I mean, it really is. They're carbon sequesters.
That's right.
There's really nothing toxic that goes into the production of any of these products. Even Western red cedar, Douglas fir, some other domestic softwoods, they're very sustainable.
Yep.
But there are some woods out there like epay that definitely have questionable sourcing and sustainability concerns.
More suspect.
More suspect for sure.
On a side note to that, Robbie, I used to live in the Pacific Northwest, and when I worked in Oregon, I remember driving a lot kind of through Oregon, Washington, backpacking trips, that sort of thing. I was always amazed by the forest management that I saw, and I actually grew up East Coast and had this picture growing up in the 70s that we were clear cutting forests, and those old 1920s photos of a couple guys with a huge wood saw sitting on a 10-inch wide redwood stump. And that's not at all what's going on. Those forests in the Pacific Northwest are managed incredibly well. You would see signs, this forest is 10 years old, this forest is 20 years old. They're harvesting it, year 25 for a lot of the softwoods that I'm using as framing lumber. So I'm glad to hear that these are in that same category.
Absolutely.
Now you mentioned some of these other woods. You have some other stuff besides cabiny and Akoya, right? What's this guy?
That's a Western red cedar. Western red cedar is a tried and true product. We have taken it and really done some unique finishes on it. So these are actually shishugibon finishes. We do a light burn, and then we're doing a multi-coat coating system on them. So we really build up the performance of the finish. In terms of sustainability, they're cutting down less than 1% of the British Columbian forests. Using selective harvesting. It's a product with a good price point as well. That's kind of our starting point for exterior siding, Western red cedar.
Got it. Now another wood on here on the table that we've not talked about that I've heard a lot about over the years and I've actually used quite a bit on my houses is thermally modified. Talk to me about this one.
That's another relatively recent advancement in the wood industry. I think thermal modification has been around close to 20 years or so, but basically they're taking woods that traditionally weren't suitable for exterior use, ash, poplar, oak, radiata pine, they're thermal modifying as well. So it's those are totally non-toxic. It's just a heat process.
It's toasted, basically.
It basically reduces the moisture content to about 2%, stabilizes it, so water can't penetrate. It also hardens it, the thermal modification process.
Interesting. All right, now I got a tougher question for you. I'm going off script here for a second. We've got Akoya, we've got cabiny, and we've got thermo ash. What are the differences from your perspective as a builder and architect thinking about using some of these on the outside of the house?
A few considerations. I mean, a Koya for siding, it's our go-to. It has a great warranty. It's also not as dense. The process hardens it, but it's still a very workable product. Once you start getting into cabiny, thermo ash, and then something like epay, which is literally hard as a rock, how it installs is important. With Akoya, you can blind nail it. You don't have to pre-drill.
Okay.
You can nail or screw it without having to pre-drill. Cabiny, as I mentioned, is a great deck product. So is thermo ash. But really,
so those horizontal surfaces.
Yeah, really, at the end of the day, it comes down to grain pattern. You get a different look with the ash than the radiata
you're seeing. Yeah,
and really pop the grain.
That's interesting. This cabiny really reminds me a lot of an epay. If I didn't know any better and just saw that on the table, I'd say, oh, it's lighter epay.
It's a little lighter.
And well, these will both gray out over time, right? These aren't going to stay chocolate brown.
They will, and for decks especially, we recommend that. Decks or any horizontal surface gets a lot more direct exposure than a vertical surface.
Between the UV and the rain, it's getting blasted.
Yeah. As a rule of thumb, a deck's going to age almost twice as quick as a siding material.
Makes sense.
But yeah, as I said, we definitely recommend a realistic approach and just let your deck gray out, and it's beautiful as well.
Okay, so these are going to gray out twice as fast as a wall product,
give or take.
Talk to me about this. You know, this is a Akoya rough sawn with a rust. Is what you're calling the stain. I put this on my house as a builder. How should I coach my clients about maintenance and what this is going to look like in year 2 or year 10?
Yeah, we put a lot of stock into understanding performance. We test these products in real life. We also have a machine here in house. It's an accelerated weathering machine that mimics real life. So in a month, you can see how the wood's going to look, give or take, in about a year.
Okay.
So we put a lot of emphasis and performance of these finishes. Most of our exterior finishes are in the 4 to 6 year window of refinishing.
That's pretty good.
We can build up coats and extend it to close to 10 years.
Wow.
Most woods, as you know, are going to be on a 1 to 2 year maintenance cycle or refinishing cycle.
Yeah. So you're doubling or tripling that?
Doubling or tripling. In terms of a stained siding, whether you get it from us or someone else, you know, once that color starts to fade by about 20%, you want to start thinking about refinishing it.
Okay, 20%. So not a ton of fading before you want to think about it.
Not a ton, but you'll definitely notice it.
Okay. Talk to me about cut edges. You know, this is a cut sample. This hasn't been treated on the edge. If I'm in the field, what do I want to do with that?
So we will supply you a touch-up kit. These are pre-finished siding products, so they're just about ready for installation. You do want to look at acclimation. With a koya or a modified wood, that could be a matter of days. In all honesty, some of our clients don't acclimate those types of woods because they are very high performing woods. But on site, you're going to trim the ends. That's just part of the installation process.
So then you're going to touch those ends up with more of that stain you're providing.
You do want to touch the ends up. Once again, with a product like Akoya, is it a performance thing? Not necessarily, but it's best practice, and you could have some blonde exposed, so you want to color it as well. Yeah,
that makes sense. You're covering that color up. Whereas if you had another wood, Western red cedar or Doug fir, you'd want to do those cut ends so that we're absorbing less moisture.
Yes, that's where wood is going to absorb most of the moisture, not the face, not the backside, not the edges. That's where the capillaries of the tree are, and it literally will soak up moisture from those cut ends.
Talk to me about fastening. You know, we mentioned blind nails already. What if I want a face nail or face screw or some type of nailing pattern that I'm going to see?
A couple considerations. I mean, on that point, I definitely want to stress proper fasteners. A lot of the issues we deal with for structural performance of the siding is improper fasteners. We've seen staples, we've seen trim nails, we've seen anything under the sun in terms of installing wood siding. So we really recommend two options: a stainless steel screw or a stainless steel ring-shanked siding nail.
Okay.
And these are defined as siding nails.
Yep.
This is going to be an 8 or 10 penny nail, stainless steel. In terms of fastening, we have really two main profiles. A tongue and groove. The tongue will be faced up on a horizontal application. You can blind nail. So you have you don't have an exposed fastener.
Yep.
You can also face fasten as well. Most people want the tongue and groove because they want to blind nail it. They don't want an exposed fastener.
Yeah.
We are seeing more and more people install with an exposed fastener.
I know. I personally love that look.
It looks good. It adds another element,
It's a craftsmanship
symmetry.
look for me too.
Absolutely.
When those screws or nails are all lined up and looking good.
Absolutely.
Ooh, it can look. For me as a builder, I just love that craftsmanship.
Absolutely. A shiplap. One thing I want to touch on with the shiplap. A lot of our clients are using a screw to face fasten. You can't blind nail a shiplap
because it'll just flap in the breeze.
Exactly. But a good thing about a shiplap and a screw is that if a board is damaged, needs to be removed or replaced, you can back it out.
Yeah. It's not locked in there like a tongue and groove board might be.
Yeah. It'll take a little more work to pull out a tongue and groove board if need be.
The house that I did with you guys, which was really my first introduction to y'all, had a gator pattern, a koya on the outside. And we ended up going with, at my recommendation, the client took it, a black Simpson coated stainless trim head square drive screw.
Yep.
And so we were able to face fasten those. That house 5 years later, we have replaced a board or two. It actually got hit with some pretty good hail.
Yeah.
And we replaced a board or two, super easy. No problem at all with that face screwing. However, I wouldn't use a square head anymore. I've learned my lesson on square head and stainless.
Yep.
You really want to go with a, what is it, a Torx bit or a T19? I forget what the exact head size is.
Yeah.
A star drive screw, basically, rather than a square drive Robertson. But we are getting a little bit tight on time. I've got 3:44. And speaking of shishugibon, guys, if you're not familiar with this was my first introduction to these guys years ago. They are kind of known nationally as the shishugibon guys. This is a process that Robbie and his team have really pioneered on a large scale basis. But you could actually learn to do this yourself. And Robbie gave me a few lessons at the job site, or I should say at the warehouse, the mill shop a couple days ago. So let's cut to the video and let me show you how this process works. And if you want to do some yourself, Robbie's going to give you some tips. All right, Robbie, we showed these guys the big scale shishugibon operation that you pioneered, but give us the backyard version, the one-off if someone wants to try this. Tell us what we need to know and how to do it.
Absolutely, Matt. This is how we started doing it back in 2008. That's when we started charring wood. At the time, we didn't even know that it was shishugibon, which is an ancient Japanese method of charring wood. They did it to preserve the wood before there were even wood sealers on the market, dating back hundreds of years. And other cultures around the world have charred wood as well. They also did it as a fire retardant. Once the wood is carbonized on the surface, it's harder to ignite than a fresh wood.
Okay.
Kind of like a charred log in your fireplace. You want fresh wood to burn. But as I said, that carbon acts as a sealer. It's a UV protectant and a fire retardant. And this is how we started in 2008, burning one piece at a time. Wood species, size, profile, the amount, and how you char it is all very important for the quality and ultimately performance of the shishugibon.
But it's basically a weed torch and a propane tank, right? Will you give us a little tour of the process?
Absolutely, let's do it. So just a couple considerations before I start. As I mentioned, the profile of the wood. Most of the wood we're charring is profile, the tongue and groove, a shiplap. We do custom profiles on a regular basis as well. You want to char the surface and not char the edges. If the tongue and groove is deteriorated too much, you won't be able to install it. If it's crumbling, you'll definitely have issues. You won't be able to install it.
Yeah, there's definitely a finesse to this, I would guess, right?
Yeah, so that's one of the tricky parts, and that's what gives us an advantage. We run this through a burn line. It's automated, feed rate, temperature, flame, it's all controlled. So we can run thousands of feet in a day with consistency.
That's pretty cool.
And the consistency is very important with shishugibon. You can blacken it, but the level of burn, the edges, the face, if it's not consistent, a lesser burned area is going to age quicker than a more heavily charred area of your plank.
Makes sense.
So you really want consistency from end to end.
Okay, cool. Light that thing up, man. Let's see it.
Let's do it.
And this is just a basic weed torch you'd buy at the home center, right?
Yep. Pear burner, weed burner. So you usually want to start at one end and go from there. You don't want to jump back and forth, really.
Be careful, guys. If you're doing this at home, think about your surroundings. Have a fire extinguisher handy. Be smart, right? Don't be dumb when you're doing this.
Be smart.
Check that out, Robbie. That looks awesome. Does it kind of self-extinguish when you've got, I mean, I would have thought that maybe this whole thing would have stayed burnt, but it's kind of self-extinguishing, isn't it?
We have a mister system on our burn line. I should have had a spray bottle out here to knock that flame down.
Yep. Man, that thing put some heat out, Robbie. That weed burner, when you fired it up, it'd been a while since I used one. I forgot how powerful they can get.
They're hot.
Man, that looks awesome. Look at that.
So this is our gator finish. This is one of our most popular finishes, and this is on Akoya.
You know what's cool is you can kind of see the cathedraling pattern on the burn.
You can still see the graining come through, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's really cool, especially when the sun hits it. So we sell this product unfinished, which would be this, meaning no coatings thereafter. We also put an oil on this product as well. It gives it a little extra protection. It gives it a more stark, kind of matte black finish. With an unfinished gator like this, you really get some of the iridescence coming through, some of the graphite, silvery tones. And like I said, when the sun hits it, it really pops.
That's cool.
Which is unique. When it's overcast or the sun's setting, you get more of a consistent black. When the sun's hitting it, you really get some shimmering with the product. That's really cool.
Now, Robbie, you do this on Akoya, which is a fantastic exterior wood. In fact, I have some Akoya on my house being built right now. But how would the process change if you used Doug fir, you did a hemlock, pine, something like that? What would be different about what you just did?
Well, the wood species is very important. The more stable the wood, the better it's going to be overall for shishugibon.
Makes sense.
That temperature exchange can really shock the wood, so you definitely want to use the right wood species. Yeah. Soft woods, traditionally in Japan, they used a Japanese cypress, which is a fairly stable wood, but it was a readily available and cheaper wood product. It would last, it would hold up for 20 years or so. But the stability of the wood is key. Some boards can cup, they can bow, they can warp. If the boards are warping on you, it's going to be tough to handle, tough to install. So wood species is important.
And then I think I want to mention the consistency too, Robbie. You know, when you're doing this by hand, getting a perfectly consistent A board may be doable, but thinking about putting this on siding or a larger span, I think it'd be really hard to get that weed torch out and be able to do it consistent among. So certainly that's your advantage as a big shop with a couple decades worth of experience on this.
Yeah, consistency and doing it on a large scale is not as easy as it looks.
Yeah, Robbie, good stuff, man. Let's head back to the studio, y'all. That was really fun, Robbie. Nice job on the demonstration.
Thanks, that was fun.
I bet you've done that demonstration a few times before, haven't you?
A few times, yeah, here and there.
All right, guys, let's transfer over to the Q&A time. If you're watching this on YouTube later, this is a pre-recorded. Stay tuned for future announcements and make sure you join us for a Build Show Live. For all of you watching this live, if you've got a question, jump on the Q&A tab, and we actually have like 30 of answered already from our team in the back. But you all have asked some really good questions, so we're gonna take the last 10 minutes or so to answer some of those questions. And by the way, if you're watching this on the pre-record, this will be a live build show on the YouTube channel and on buildshownetwork.com. All right, let's jump in with a couple questions. Mark Timmons says, do you miter ends for corners on exterior siding? Ooh, that's a good one, Robbie. Can you miter corners?
You can, it's done a lot. We don't recommend it. Even with the very stable wood, any sort of expansion or contraction especially, you're gonna open up that seam. Especially a softwood. I mean, even Western red cedar, a good wood. I mean, there's going to be some movement. Some seams are going to be tight. Some are going to be open.
Yep.
We really recommend either a trim piece of wood, or they make several options with like an aluminum corner bracket that's low profile and just a really clean look.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I've done mitered corners a couple times. They'll always look amazing the day you install them.
Yep.
And you come back 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months later, and it's always, oh, that's frustrating.
Yeah,
that it's not as beautiful.
Right.
So I would avoid mitered corners. Check out Tamlin if you're not familiar with them. That's a Houston-based company that makes all kinds of X corners, outside corners, or you can get a knife edge corner. My shishugibon I did with you guys, that's probably on my website, reisingerbuild.com. We did this style shugibon. And at the corners, I used a mitered corner on here, but I stopped it shy of a metal edge that we had bent locally just out of some black brake metal. And so we painted this end black. You don't need to char it. Of course, you certainly could, but the problem with that is it's gonna flake off. We just painted these black. They look fantastic. And you're never going up to your siding with this, 2 inches away thing. You're always looking at siding from a few feet away.
Right.
So
Right.
Cut ends going black, you're good to go on that. Okay, next question from Sam. I've seen Akoya referenced as a good alternative for teak, but a much more sustainable option and less expensive. Can Delta achieve a look similar to teak with Akoya?
Absolutely. We're doing a lot of brown options. This isn't necessarily a teak match, but just one example of what we can do. As I mentioned, we're custom coloring, a lot of finishes. We're matching other woods almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, good question. All right, we got a question from an anonymous. What width and length do you offer in your flooring? I'm realizing we spend so much time on the outside, Robbie, we didn't even get into your interior options, of which there are copious. Talk to us about flooring, widths, lengths, and options.
Have a few options. These are all European made. This is a European platform with a French white oak wear layer that you're looking at here. Our standard is a 7.5 inch width. Woo. I believe that's a 9 or 10 inch.
I don't know if you can see that wear layer right there on the tight camera. But there's, what is that, about a 1/4 inch of wood, and then a Baltic birch plywood, and then another 1/4 inch of wood on the bottom, is that right?
So that's a counterbalanced or 3-layer construction. So that sub-layer that Matt's pointing at, that balances out the top layer. If there's any environmental changes where that top layer wants to cup or shrink, that sub-layer is really gonna make it one of the most stable flooring options on the market.
Look at that, that is what, 12 inch wide?
I think that's about 10. I mean, we do wide plank floors up to 17 inches wide.
Oh my
really the widest floors on the market.
Holy cow.
Up to 14, 15 feet long. Our wide plank starts at 7 feet, 7 to 15 feet in length.
Woo. And these are all pre-finished. And by the way, my interior designer, Rachel, spec'd some 8-inch version of this from my house. So stay tuned for an install video from my house in a couple months. Some beautiful stuff. And all that's on your website too, Robbie.
Absolutely. We take the same approach to flooring as we do siding. We're a custom operation on that front.
Love it. Love it. Okay, here's an interesting one. Charlie says, I'm remodeling a houseboat in San Francisco, always looking for good exterior cladding for marine environments. My local lumberyard offers thermally processed decking, but I noticed the freshwater caveat, which you mentioned earlier. Can you comment on saltwater versus freshwater for any one of these, whether it's thermally modified or Akoya?
Akoya's definitely done a lot of saltwater testing. It doesn't meet a 25-year warranty just yet, but based on their testing, it's a high-performing wood. In terms of saltwater contact, Akoya is going to be our go-to.
Yeah.
How long it lasts, it depends on exposure, but it's going to last, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, longer than any other option.
Most likely, yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Robbie, how about this question from Brad Metler? Does Delta offer rift or quarter sawn options as well?
Absolutely. In oak, we do a rift and quartered cut, and then in siding and softwoods, we do vertical grain cuts all the time.
Beautiful. Love it. All right. Here's a great question. Sarah Costa has a question about shishugibon. Is it true that shishugibon stands up better to fire than other options?
It does. That's why the Japanese did it primarily as a fire retardant. Once the wood's charred, it's harder to ignite than a fresh wood. We've done ASTM, E84 fire tests, raw wood or stained wood versus shishugibon, and there's a
giant difference.
Definitive tested difference. They're definitely more fire resistant, a shishugibon product.
Yeah, you think about just your own fireplace in the fire pit backyard example. Your fresh split firewood starts up like that, and the burned wood from last night's fire has a hard time lighting.
You gotta put lighter fluid on it.
Yeah, you gotta put lighter fluid on it, that's right. You need an accelerant to get there. Is there a warranty on shishugibon cladding? Dan Koenig's asking us.
There's not finished warranties. We kind of address on a per project basis, but no, there's not. We stand behind our finishes. We set accurate expectations with anything. Shishugibon finish, we're going to tell you how it's going to perform.
Yeah.
Obviously, all these exterior woods are based on the environment, exposure. You can have a covered wall, and you may not have to touch it for 20 years.
Yeah.
You can have high exposure. We do work high altitude, Colorado, coastal California, anything in between. So exposure is important, and we will work around those considerations and really set expectations. If someone wants their wood based on their environment, where it's going, they say we got to have 5 years or X amount of time between maintenance or re-oiling, we'll get them there every time.
Yeah, and I would chime in to say, look, this is your job as the builder or the architect to contact Delta, send them your plans, talk to the sales rep. Like I talked to Pat, my sales rep, about a job. And if you're using, let's say, thermally modified in a soffit with a 3-foot overhang, this is going to look as chocolatey brown and perfect 10 years as it does sitting on this table, because it's underneath, there's no sunlight, there's no rain. Whereas if I put that on siding and now it's 6 inches off the ground, this is going to change. The UV rays are going to gray it out, the sun, the sprinkler system, all that's going to change it. So you need to think about the type of architecture, the type of exposure, and what you're using there. And you mentioned setting those expectations. That is key, right? That's the secret to a happy marriage, is setting good expectations after being married 20 years. That's the secret to happy clients, setting good expectations. And almost all the times I've had a dust up with a client, it's because I didn't set proper expectations. I thought they knew, but we didn't really talk about it properly, or I didn't have them really sign off to say I heard that properly. Or the house change owners and their expectations were different than the original owner. So think about the architecture and think about where you're doing it. Speaking of which, on expectations real quick, we talked about fasteners, Robbie, but I saw someone asked another fastener question, which is more of a generic one. Stainless versus galvanized. What's the difference on an exterior install, and could you get away with galvanized? Do you have to do stainless?
You have to do stainless on Akoya and cabiny because they are chemically modified. They do have some acidity within the makeup of the wood. It can lead to some staining, probably not any structural issues, at least anytime soon, but it's more of a discoloration
Cosmetic
type of thing. But as a best practice for cedar, for thermo, we recommend stainless steel as the best fastener option you can choose.
Got it. So make sure that you plan the time ahead of time to get those fasteners on the job, because your local lumber yard may only have the galvanized, and stainless is the best choice for these. That's a great one, Robbie. What coating would you recommend? This is from Susan Conger Austin. What coating would you recommend if using shishugibon for an exterior application? You want to talk about these two samples and what you've got going here?
So exterior, a few trade secrets in-house. So I mean, just a general rule of thumb. I mean, anything that's penetrating, and once again, it depends on the shishugibon. These products are shishugibon. These are obviously shishugibon.
So this is actually a shishugibon too. These have actually been toasted too.
Yep.
Just a much lighter toast process, right?
Yep. Options: Rubio monocoat, Pinafin, Sikkens. I mean, there's several options. I would recommend, if you're doing it yourself, do some test burning and also some test staining.
Yeah, that's smart.
You're going to need to.
And even do a sample board and leave it outside for a little bit and see.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Now we used something like this on our project together. What's this finish that I'm seeing on here?
Well, that's actually an interior finish. That's why you kind of get that gloss on it. That's not our standard exterior finish.
That's right. We did use this on the inside.
Yep.
And what's the reasoning for using that on the inside of the house?
Just protection. We do a lot of high traffic areas. We do a lot of hospitality, bars, restaurants. So
when you're touching it, you're not getting that charcoalish kind of...
They want that look, but you can't have any ash or flaking come off. So that's a multi-coat, clear coat of sorts, and we call it our commercial interior, and it protects the wood from flaking.
And I'm not sure who asked this, but I saw earlier someone asked, do you need to be specific about which type of wood you're going to burn, you're going to do that shishugibon on? Does that matter?
It definitely matters. The stability of the wood, the hardness of the wood, that directly equates into the quality of the shishugibon. The softer the wood, the softer the char is going to be. The less stable the wood, the less stable it's going to be once you burn it, and then after you burn it and install it. The heat transfer, I mean, you're really blasting it with heat. So any sort of temperature exchange is gonna, the wood's gonna wanna move. The more stable, Akoya, cabiny, that's why in terms of exterior woods, this is really what we stick to. Because they're stable, they can take a burn, and they're not twisting, they're not cupping.
They're not moving on you.
Right.
Yeah. Robbie, last question, we're gonna wrap up. We're a minute or two over. Thanks for hanging with us, guys. Dan Koenig says, I've read that shishugibon doesn't fade in the sunlight. Is that true?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. It depends. Our gator burns on Akoya and cabiny, they don't fade. I mean, we think they're easily 10-year finishes. Can they be damaged? They can.
Certainly.
If they're damaged, you're going to see some fresh wood come through. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of lighter shishugibon finishes that we do and also on the market. Those can fade quickly if they're not protected properly.
Yeah.
So with the lighter burn, we really rely on our coating system to protect that char. Once you have a lighter burn like that, it's not really offering much protection. You really need a deep, full char to have a finish that performs and doesn't fade like a lighter shishugibon, which you see a lot these days.
Man, we covered a lot, but I feel like there's another 3 hours we could go, Robbie, on these topics. We're hitting over the hour mark, so we probably should wrap it up. Robbie, really appreciate it, man.
Thanks
what
so
a
much,
beautiful
Matt.
operation. And
absolutely.
For me, always a pleasure when I find another family-owned business, and for Robbie to be the second generation owner of this mill shop right here near downtown Austin, Texas. Really, really cool company. And you saw it earlier, they have an incredible samples department. My interior designer on my house, we use several areas of some Delta Woodworks, and that's coming up still. I have some of my interiors as well. They sent me some great samples. These guys are a great resource. So there'll be a link in the description if you're watching this pre-recorded for Delta Millworks website. Is it deltamillworks.com?
deltamillworks.com. Please give us a shout.
Give these guys a call. They've got some great salespeople that can really answer those questions for you. Robbie, someone did ask, I forgot to mention this, can I buy your hat online was one of the questions.
Shortly you can. We're doing it.
Right.
We're doing an e-store. We get so much requests for shirts and hats that we figured we'd offer them.
You're gonna beat me to it. I still don't have my merch store up yet, Robbie.
Send us an email. We'll get you a hat. Absolutely.
Guys, thanks so much for joining us. If you're watching this on the Build Show on YouTube, guys, hit that subscribe button. We've got new content every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show.